We're witnessing an unprecedented historic standoff between the judicial branch and the executive branch. A federal judge now faces calls for impeachment because of a temporary restraining order he issued in a piece of litigation involving the expedited mass deportations of individuals. The discourse has escalated so much that the U.S. Supreme Court has weighed in, with the Chief Justice issuing a rare rebuke of the rhetoric. Nothing is normal in American government in 2025. And it's getting harder and harder to decipher how the system is supposed to work versus what's an all-out attack on the rule of law. I'm Kimberly Russell, a lawyer and a former journalist, and I'm trying to make sense of law, politics, and power. Today, I'm breaking down what's actually happening with this so-called radical leftist judge and the dangerous precedent that could be set by impeaching judges over their judicial rulings. Let's dive in. This all started last Saturday, March 15, 2025, when U.S. District Court Judge James Boasberg issued a temporary restraining order blocking hundreds of expedited deportations under a wartime law called the Alien Enemies Act. Detainees were accused of gang affiliations with the violent gang Tren de Aragua out of Venezuela. Now, Judge Boasberg's order did not permanently bar the deportation of these individuals. Instead, it simply halted removals for 2 weeks to ensure that each accused individual received adequate due process afforded to everyone under the Constitution. The Trump administration openly defied this order and then doubled down. President Trump posted to Truth Social calling Judge Boasberg a radical left lunatic of a judge appointed by President Obama. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi went on Fox News to say this judge has no right to ask questions about compliance with his own order. Now, congressional representatives and conservative leaders, including former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich, are calling for Judge Boasberg's impeachment. It's extreme rhetoric over a rather routine judicial procedure. The discourse escalated to a point that it spurred a rare rebuke from Chief Justice John Roberts, saying, quote, "Impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning judicial decisions." He went on to say that's what the appellate process is for. Nonetheless, calls for Judge Boasberg's impeachment persist with a growing social media narrative that he is a leftist usurper. So why is this a big deal and why does it matter to you? It comes down to judicial independence, which is a pillar of our constitutional democracy. What's happening in Judge Boasberg's court is a high-stake piece of litigation. The executive branch issued an order enacting this rare wartime statute to expedite mass deportations of individuals. What this wartime act allows for is elimination of due process rights. That's why it's reserved for wartime and not peacetime. After the executive branch issued this executive order, they were sued by the ACLU. In litigation matters like this, there are often injunctive reliefs in order to keep what's called the status quo from being upended. In this case, Judge Boasberg issued a temporary restraining order on the deportation of these detainees. Temporary restraining orders are also referred to as TROs. TROs are granted when there is a risk of immediate harm and when the court needs time to determine if the law is being followed. It does not determine the ultimate merits of the case. So let's apply this to a real-world example for you. Imagine you've been wrongfully convicted of murder and new evidence emerges proving your innocence hours before you're scheduled to be executed. Your attorney would file that evidence in front of the court, and then a court would likely file an injunctive measure, like a temporary restraining order, to stay your execution in order to consider the new evidence. If the court did not implement this measure, you would be executed, then the court would review the evidence, and then if it found that the evidence proved your innocence, it would be too late. You would already be dead. That's what's happening in this exact case and what Judge Boasberg was trying to prevent. We are now seeing claims from families of alleged individuals who were deported saying that their family members have been seen on camera in this prison and that they have no affiliation with this gang. Some of these people might have even had papers to be here legally, but there is no paper trail of who's over there, and there's no way to get them back. This is what Judge Boasberg was trying to prevent with his temporary restraining order. Again, the TRO was not intended to keep these deportations from happening permanently. It was to ensure that due process was afforded to every individual accused of affiliation with this gang, accused of violent crimes. The point in all of this is that TROs are nothing new, and they have nothing to do with partisanship. Judges issue temporary restraining orders against companies, against government, against individuals all of the time to ensure that damage is not done while they're considering whether or not the law is being followed. It's also important to point out when people are calling Judge Boasberg a radical left lunatic judge, as the president did in his Truth Social post, that Judge Boasberg was actually appointed to the federal bench by President George W. Bush in 2002. Judge Boasberg was appointed to the D.C. Superior Court and then elevated to U.S. District Court federal judge by President Obama in 2011. Prior to Judge Boasberg's appointment to the bench, he was a U.S. prosecutor in the District of Columbia where he prosecuted homicides. He's also known for his collegiality within the profession. He has good relationships with Trump-appointed judges, including serving on panels with a Trump-appointed judge, and he used to be roommates with current Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who was appointed by President Trump in his last term. This is a far cry from the radical leftists the right is trying to paint Judge Boasberg out to be. With all of his experience as a prosecutor, as a federal court judge, as a federal district court judge, Judge Boasberg evaluated the laws and he implemented the temporary restraining order to ensure that we were not hastily enacting this wartime act in order to deport people without proper due process. Again, this was not a permanent bar on deportation of these individuals. After 2 weeks in proper procedures, it's very well likely that deportations could have resumed after the administration took these detained individuals and brought them through a proper hearing process to determine whether or not they had a right to remain in this country. Instead of complying with the TRO, the Trump administration put the detainees on planes and sent them to a prison camp. The bigger issue here is for an administration to openly defy a routine order and leverage it to vilify our judicial system signals a greater conflict between the judiciary and the executive branch over the rule of law. If you've been following me for a while, you've seen me post a little bit about the rule of law. The rule of law is fundamental to how our government works. It is a vital legal principle that mandates no one is above the rule of law. It also means that the law is applied equitably and consistently to everyone. And this allows for transparency in creation of laws so that you as citizens know what laws are and how they're going to be applied. And it also creates predictable enforcement of those laws. In America, we have 3 co-equal branches of government. The legislative branch makes the laws, the executive branch enforces the laws, and the judicial branch reviews and applies the laws during legal disputes. When one branch of the government defies the other, the country is forced into a constitutional crisis. So why does this matter to you? If the law isn't applied fairly, no one's rights are safe. You could be detained and you could be deported with no opportunity to be heard, even if you are a U.S. citizen. It's also an extremely dangerous precedent to set by intimidating judges with impeachment, which is reserved for crimes like bribery. If judges fear impeachment for ruling against the government, they stop ruling out of neutrality and start ruling out of fear. And this is how democracy dies. I want to know what you think. Should judges be impeached over their judicial opinions? Why or why not? Comment below or DM me. Once again, I'm Kimberly Russell, an attorney and former journalist living in Washington, D.C. And like so many others, I'm frustrated with the current rhetoric happening in our politics right now. Legal knowledge shouldn't be locked behind a law degree, and you should have the facts and information you need to know in order to understand what's really happening beyond the political gaslighting. My ultimate goal is to produce more content like this in as unbiased of a manner as possible. If there's a topic you'd like explained, let me know and I will do my best to explain it. Follow me for more and stay tuned. And as always, feedback is welcomed.